This week we release episodes 99 and 100. That's right, 100 episodes since December 1st, 2016. Matt and I have gone all over North Carolina finding the stories of compelling food and beverage industry leaders. We hope you've enjoyed listening to everything we've done, and get ready because we have a whole lot more to come in the future. But as we get to episodes 99 and 100, we'd like to say thanks to all of the sponsors, both current, brand new, and previous, that have helped us along the journey. I mean, we originally started with Food Scene, who's a great social media management, food and video photography, website design, graphic design company. They've been our first sponsor and helped us along the way, so thank you very much. But brands like the Curate app, or Van Daughtry Consulting, or Meredith College Master's Program have all helped us along the way. And current sponsors like Social House Vodka, Triangle Wine Company, Happy Hour Vitamins, Larry's Coffee and 42 in Lawrence, Ramona Wine Coolers, Michael's English Muffins. Annabelle, thank you for all of those delicious muffins. And new brands like Alley 26 Tonic. That's Shannon Healy and Rob Mariani's project coming out of Alley 26 in Durham. It's an excellent tonic syrup that you can make delicious cocktails with. And then Hungry Harvest. They came on to help support our cause too, so big thanks to them. When you order your first box of Hungry Harvest, make sure that you put NCFB in the promo code to receive $5 off your first purchase. And we just brought on another new sponsor, Magnum Beard. That's right. You see those beautiful beards that Matt and I rock? Well, it's thanks to Magnum Beard. You can get balms, oils, a whole kit. So go to magnumbeard.com for all of your beard needs. And so let's set up episodes 99 and 100, which features the Pinehurst Chef and Maker series. This particular series features Paul Verica of the newly opened Stanley in Charlotte. You may recognize Paul Verica's name because he ran Heritage for all those many years. He's a James Beard semifinalist and a fantastic guy. Great, compelling conversation. But first, we get into it with Pinehurst's executive chef, Thierry DeBailleul. I probably destroyed the pronunciation of that. Sorry about that, Chef T. Terry starts off the episode talking about everything that is Pinehurst in a culinary sense. There are so many moving parts. It's amazing what he can do. And then we start talking to Paul about what his experiences were like opening Heritage, the process of opening the Stanley, and working with his son on the line. It's a great heartwarming conversation. Episode 100 is part 2 of the Pinehurst experience. And that will feature someone that is near and dear to our hearts, Esteban McMahon, Topo Distilling in Chapel Hill. Topo and Esteban have been huge supporters of the podcast since we've lived in North Carolina. So a big shout out and tip of the hat to all that they have done for North Carolina and for us. We get to listen to how Esteban joined up with Topo, how it was created. It's a fascinating story, and we're very proud to make that our 100th episode. Later in the episode, we speak with Nancy Bruns of J.Q. Dickinson Salt Works. Nancy has a phenomenal story that goes back 7 generations of salt making. Thanks again. Support our sponsors by supporting local business. And we sincerely thank you for listening to the first 100 episodes of the NCF&B and look forward to the next 100. And if you haven't already told 10 of your friends to click and subscribe, what are you waiting for? Seriously, thank you so much, and thanks for the support. That's how we can continue to do this show, is with your support, subscribing, and telling a friend about it. Brian Hoyle, take it away.
You're listening to the NCF&B podcast, part of the OG Podcast Network. The NCF&B podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBpod. This episode sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. And now, enjoy the show.
So we are at the historic Pinehurst Golf Course. We just finished the back 9, the front 9, the only 9 of the Cradle. Golf Digest called it the most fun hour of golf in the world.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. And Matt, who are we here with?
So we are here in Southern Pines, North Carolina, but we're talking to Esteban McMahon of Topo Distillery in Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
That's me.
That's Captain McMahon.
Ex-captain.
I think once you're a captain, you're always a captain, right?
I'm not sure how that works. I can't remember.
Well, you don't make any spiced rum, I don't believe, at Topo. So.
We do.
Oh, you do make the
Yeah, we
top
just
rum.
started making the spiced rum.
That's right. What a segue.
Seriously.
The captain's in. So,
Yeah.
captain of the Army.
Yep.
But now one of the proprietors of Topo Distillery, who, little known fact I didn't realize, I just had in my head that Topo had just been around for years and years, and the restaurant has been around for 18 years, you said, right?
Almost 21 years now.
I have the facts, right? 21 years. But the distillery is only about 6 years old. you
Correct.
said.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, Topo Distillery, kind of a new...
Yeah, because it was the beer first, right?
Yeah, the restaurant brewery, that started in 96. And then the distillery started basically as an offshoot of that.
Right. Because wasn't it... How does the story go, Scott? Basically, it was the whole canning the beer process was getting in the way?
Yeah, so when the restaurant first opened, when the brew pub first opened, they had excess capacity. They weren't getting all the guests to drink up all the beer as quickly as they could make it. And so we were looking for a better way to send people home with our beer. We have growlers, but growlers, the beer goes bad pretty quickly there. And in 2004 or 5, I think, Scott ran into a 6-pack canning machine.
Yeah.
And became the first micro canner in the South. And that went really, really well. Started getting some good distribution around Chapel Hill and Durham. And then business really picked up at the restaurant. And so that excess capacity went away. And it's about 6 times more profitable selling the beer by the glass up there at the restaurant than it is going through canning and distribution.
Right.
So we stopped canning and distributing. Then we started looking at opening up a separate brewing facility just for canning, and that was the plan. But we were trying to incorporate locally sourced foods into the restaurant, and just struggling at that point because of the volume of food that we did. So like busy football weekend, something like 1,500 to 1,700 dinners a night.
Wow.
At one point, I think the largest free-range chicken rancher in Orange County said, "Buy my free-range chicken breasts." We said, "Fantastic, we need 1,000 chicken breasts a week." And the guy said, "I can give you like 80. So there wasn't enough of it back then. Now there is, so now we've got it on the menu. But back then there wasn't, and so we were. Scott was trying to build the local economy, involved with the Chamber of Commerce and all that. And as we started looking at beer, realized that beer in North Carolina, for the most part, is not local in the food sense. It's only local in the sense that it's brewed locally, but all the ingredients, the hops and the barley, come from a long way away.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's because we don't get enough daylight hours down here for the hops, and the barley that grows down here, different protein and gluten than what is preferable for beer. Mm-hmm. So we looked at maybe open up a winery because we serve a lot of wine up there, but we realized that that would be a bit of a struggle in North Carolina, and so we
Don't tell that to Jones Von Drell or Sanctuary.
Oh no, but this is 10 years ago too, right? I mean, but opening up a vineyard it's a long process, right? I mean, you got to let the vines mature for quite a while. So we thought, well, what about spirits? We are usually one of the top purchasers of vodka in the state. And so we decided to do that using North Carolina grains or fruits. And then we ran into at that point, the largest organic farmer of wheat in North Carolina, Jack H. Winslow Farms in Scotland Neck. And so we contracted to buy all of his wheat.
Nice.
Wow. Well, and I guess it makes sense because you're already making essentially wort by making beer.
Correct.
So we had
the expertise.
You had the foundation to then turn that wort or turn your beer into a distillate of some sort. So
Correct.
Now I want to know though, how do you play into this whole thing? Because we said before you were a captain of the Army, and I know you as. That's Esteban. He's the liquor guy, and you'll see if you live.
He's the topo guy.
He's the topo guy. If you're anywhere in public in North Carolina, you have seen and you've probably had a cocktail from Esteban at some point. But are you like foundation-wise? Are you a restaurant guy? Are you?
Nope.
How did you get
I'm a
involved
drinking guy. So I went from the Army into the financial world. Worked for the now defunct Bear Stearns. Worked for them for about 7 years in New York City, trading international equities for them, and then got another financial job opportunity down here in Durham, and so we decided to move down here. My wife is from Virginia. We wanted to get closer to her family and perhaps raise our children in a slightly healthier environment than the environment that I grew up right outside of New York City.
Right on.
So yeah, that's what brought us down here, and that went really, really well for about a decade, and maybe 15 years or so, I guess.
Yeah.
And then it all went horribly wrong in 2008, 2009.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So
refer back to Bear Stearns.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. So I was working for a hedge fund down here, and we had a blast, but we ended up winding it down. I could have stayed in the financial business, but it would have meant leaving Chapel Hill. And my wife was teaching at UNC. My daughter was in college. My son was in high school, and it didn't make sense to leave. And so I'd already invested a little bit in the restaurant and then in the distillery, and decided that I would stick around. And I've been drinking professionally for 25, 30 years at that point, so I figured I'd stick around the distillery and have some fun and check that out. So I bartended at Top of the Hill for about 6 months, just to learn how bars work and how cocktails work and purchasing systems and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then devoted my time to the distillery. So I've been doing that now for a little over 5 years.
So you literally had to start from the beginning. You never worked, even as a kid, or worked in restaurants or anything like that?
I cleaned pots and pans at I think it's called the John Duck Restaurant up in Long Island.
Nice.
And I parked cars for the restaurant too, the same restaurant, but that doesn't really count as working in the food service industry, I don't think so.
And you got to walk through the kitchen, so maybe you pick something up. So yeah, you must have literally been
complete novice.
Yeah, complete deer in the headlights when you started behind the bar, and then 6 months later you're running the distillery.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
So we're pretty small. There's Scott Malin and myself run the front office part, the day-to-day business, and then we've got a head distiller and 2 assistant distillers.
Nice. Were you actually at one point actually making the juice?
I mean, I've helped do it, but I'm not the distiller.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you're part of the process. I got to ask, tying this back to golf a little bit, what's a bigger pet peeve of you? 4-putting on the last hole that we just had, or people calling it topo?
We don't care if you call it topo or topo as long as you call it.
It is topo.
It is. It's abbreviation for Top of the Hill.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of debate about putting. So we wanted to call it Top of the Hill Distillery to begin with.
Yeah.
But there's still a federal law that prohibits a bar or restaurant owner from owning a distillery.
Right.
And that all goes back 100 years or something. And so they said that Top of the Hill Restaurant and Brewery was not a restaurant or a bar, that it was a brew pub. And there was no laws to prevent a brew pub from owning a distillery. And but they said, but you can't call it Top of the Hill because that's the name of the restaurant, right? And so we ended up going with Topo, which at that point everyone was texting, and no one texts Top of the Hill Restaurant Brewery. So we went with that.
Makes sense.
And so you opened.
There's supposed to be an apostrophe in there, but it just didn't look good on the label. So
that would have probably been confusing
people.
Yeah.
Topo.
But I mean, talk about location. As far as the restaurant is concerned, you're right there in the heart of what many people consider that's the center of Chapel Hill.
It is indeed.
And Scott, I believe, is an alum of UNC. Is that
went to law school. He's also he's a West Pointer, and then he got out after Desert Storm and went to law school at UNC.
Yeah, so these are some pretty heady dudes that run this.
And how did you and Scott meet?
My wife, actually, when we moved to Chapel Hill, she started a business on Franklin Street, antiques, some women's clothing, different stuff, and kind of like a home store. And she said, "Hey, I need you to meet this guy." I met him at one of the chamber events. I'm like, okay, great, sure.
Right.
He's an ex-Army guy. I'm like, oh, pretty awesome. Yeah, and a combat veteran like you. Cool. He's a West Pointer. Okay, I'll still talk to him. And he owns Top of the Hill. And I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah. Now wait, what does that mean about a West Pointer? Is that because he's going to be tough, or he's going to
elitist?
Nah, there's always a thing in the Army where the West Pointers are they're both admired and in some cases despised because they are. I mean, they're the elite military leaders of the Army. So.
Yeah. And if you go to West Point, you become an officer right away, right?
After you get out, right. So I went through RTC at James Madison. So I went in as a second lieutenant and got out as a captain.
Who would win in an arm wrestling match?
Scott. He's got a couple extra pounds on me.
Who would win in the Topo drinking contest?
I'd throw that to Estebans.
That's a tough one. I think Scott could hold his own on that one definitely as well. So, but it would be close either way.
Let's talk about Topo, because one of the things that I noticed, and you proudly put it on your label, is that you're organic.
Correct.
And that is not a common practice, especially when you're doing semi-high volume of making a distillery. So was that a focus in the beginning, that you wanted to make sure that this product was organic?
Yes, it was. It was. We thought it would be one definite way to differentiate ourselves from other distilleries. Mm-hmm. There are several thousand distilleries now, maybe 3,000 micro distilleries across the U.S., and there's, I think, 24 or 25 organic distilleries. So, and we were picking up the trends in organic foods at that point as well. And so it's caught on in organic foods. I mean, we've got, who's the largest organic retailer right now? Isn't it Costco? Organic foods?
Was that right?
I think it's Costco.
Yeah.
So, that's the organic foods got mainstream. Mm-hmm. Organic, you're seeing more in organic wines and beers now.
Yeah.
But you don't see it in spirits yet.
Yeah. For somebody who's thinking about moving to North Carolina or listening to this outside, what would you say is your signature? Like, what would you put in front of somebody as your signature product if they could only try one?
Yes. Boy, I mean, they're all really good. They're
the first was the vodka.
The
right?
vodka came out first,
and that kind of was created to fill a need, since you guys were already purchasing so much vodka for the restaurant. This was
right. That was the main idea, and also you don't need to do anything else to vodka. Basically, off the still, a week or so in a tank, and it's ready to bottle. Gin, we needed to come up with a recipe for the gin, so that took us an extra year and a half or so.
Okay.
We had our moonshine, our white whiskey, because once again, you don't need to do anything to it. And
by the way, that ambient sound you're hearing is the golf carts whizzing by, whisking off golfers too.
Yeah, can we just pause for a quick second and just say, this is beautiful and amazing. I mean,
it's gorgeous.
We had a tea time at 8 a.m. and we also had copious amounts of alcohol last night. So I'm impressed by all of us being here. And actually, Maddie, I think you were the first riser going out. Like, you had breakfast and
everything.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. But yeah.
Meanwhile, we were giving him a hard time because we thought you were still asleep. So
yeah, we're like, where is that guy? But our breakfast consisted of a banana. And now we're having Bloody Marys, so that's pretty good times. Okay, so let's get into the product line as we talked about it. So you have vodka, you have the Piedmont gin, you have moonshine or white whiskey. Right. You do well. So then now you also have two new products that just came out. So let's talk about those.
We brought out the 8 Oak whiskey as well.
Oh, the 8 Oak whiskey.
The 8 Oak whiskey is a chip aged whiskey, chips and spirals, and that whiskey leans a lot more towards an Irish whiskey than a bourbon. We use a lot of French oak in aging it, so that softer oak, the tannins are a lot softer.
You have an actual chip in every bottle too.
And we put because we want people to talk about it. And initially when we first did that, people were like, "Oh, you're cheating. That's how you age your whiskey. That little chip in the bottle." No, it's just if you read the label, you can learn a little bit about it. But it's really just another way of aging whiskey. There's the traditional way of putting whiskey in barrels. But the problem for that for a startup distillery is you got to buy the barrels, which they're not that expensive, $300 or $400 each. B, you have to have the storage space for them, the rick house area. Mm-hmm. You have to let it sit. Probably if you're using 53-gallon barrels, which are the most efficient, you have to wait for 2 to 4 years, and that's 2 to 4 years of not generating any revenue, right? So it's kind of painful. And then you also lose 5 to 10% a year from every barrel due to evaporation and barrel imperfections. Oh yes, and some angels get a lot greedier than others. So
they say the angels are thirsty.
They are, yeah. And so we brought out the 8 Oak whiskey, and then just at the end of last year, we brought out the Carolina Spiced Rum, which we partnered up with the Hurricanes for the release for that. And then we brought out the Reserve finally. which is a straight wheat whiskey, so 100% wheat mash bill, locally sourced, organic, and barrel aged 2 to 4 years.
And is that the same wheat that you use for the vodka?
The exact same. Yep, the exact same base. Yeah, so we use a different yeast strain for the vodka and for the gin that we do for the whiskeys.
Okay.
But,
This segment is brought to you by the Triangle Wine Company. Visit Triangle Wine Company stores in Morrisville, Cary, and Southern Pines, North Carolina. Or order your wine and beer online at trianglewineco.com. And be sure to use our promo code NCFB to receive 10% off your purchases. Triangle Wine Company.
So, well, let's go back just a second. When you're talking about the spiced rum, I'm curious because so rum in general has so many different flavor profiles. Was there a muse, if you will, something on the market where you're like, yeah, they're doing it right. I want ours to be in that style?
No, so I think the spiced rum so far has been the hardest one to nail down for us because we've got one of the best distilling setups in the country. A copper pot. We've got a continuous column, which is very rare still. There can't be any more than 15 or 20 distilleries, micro distilleries in the U.S. that are using continuous columns to strip the mash, and then a pot still for the actual distilling, because it's very expensive and you don't need it, but it's just so much more efficient.
Yeah.
And so we've got a 650 liter copper pot. We've got a 5-plate whiskey rectification column and a 22-plate vodka rectification column. And so when we distill the whiskey, we run it through from the copper pot still through the 5-plate whiskey column with 4 of the plates up because you can't distill it above 80%. But when we were doing rum, we tried running the rum through that same column so you get the exposure to the copper. But the rum came out too clean. It almost tasted like a mixture of whiskey and rum. Which, I mean, it wasn't bad. It was actually really good, but it wasn't rummy. We kept on saying, this it misses. It's not rummy enough.
Yeah.
And we actually had to ban that word from the distillery for a little while because, and so we played around with some yeast strains, and then we had to go with less refined. So by law you have to use for rum. You have to use cane, sugarcane, or a byproduct of sugarcane. So we use evaporated cane juice and molasses, and we just had to play around with the ratio of those, and most of the organic evaporated cane juice that we get comes pretty cleaned up.
Where
and you actually want dirty, like quote unquote dirty sugar.
Yeah, because that
a lot more character.
And it distills probably easier, right? Like you don't have to do as much to get it started.
No, it's the same effort distilling it. It's just you just get more of that rumminess to it.
And
so
where are you getting the cane juice? And the
so the definition of local is if it's available, and there's no organic sugar cane anywhere near North Carolina right now in bulk. We've heard there's some guys in South Carolina or Georgia, but we haven't been able to find any kind of volume. So it comes from an organic sugarcane grower in Florida.
Gotcha. And what was the impetus of saying, like, we want to make a rum? Why did you decide to get into that game?
we decided to, I mean, we're making the Topo family, so we're trying to distill pretty much every spirit that we can. We built the distillery with the intention of being able to distill pretty much everything, so...
Just like that agave spirit, man.
Well,
agave spirit somewhere in North Carolina.
I'm telling you.
I see it where I'm looking out. I see it. We spent a lot of time in sand today in desert. So
I don't know about that.
Some of us more than others.
Have you ever seen that process where they take those
I haven't seen it live, but I've
pine
seen
cones,
pictures.
right? They take those the cactus hearts.
Yeah.
Piña.
Yeah, and they're huge.
They
They're
chop them
the
with
size of this table.
Machetes
Yeah. They've got huge grinders, like mulchers almost, and then they bake it in huge, like
autoclaves.
Really big ovens.
I'll say it right now here on the podcast. If anybody wants to throw us some money, let's make Trujillo Tequila.
Trujillo Tequila.
I've already got I got the authentic name, man.
It wouldn't be tequila unless you're in the
agave spirit.
What is it, Jalisco?
Yeah. Well, there's tequila.
Truquila.
Wow.
We can call it whatever the hell we want. That sounds like tequila. That sounds horrible.
The guys from Bond Brothers, they tried to grow
with Marshall.
I saw that they won. They grew one, right?
Yeah, in the Mortiki district, right, or in the Person Street area?
Yeah, there was a huge agave that they chopped down. It was in the Oak what's it called? The Oakwood. Historic Oakwood district. And they chopped it down and turned it into I
think they eventually made a beer out of it.
They just made beer, yeah.
But anyway, I know, North Carolina climate would be tough to do that, but
so
somebody's going to figure it out one of these days.
We'll do brandy at some point. We'll do a rye whiskey. I don't know if we'll do a bourbon, just because there's so many bourbons out there. Everyone's doing bourbon, but bourbon does have that name recognition that wheat does not.
And we could get corn.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of organic corn in North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Topo, you're here at Pinehurst because you guys got included in the Chef and the Maker series.
Correct.
So how'd that happen? And what are you guys doing for this?
They've carried us for the last couple of years here in Pinehurst at some of the bars, and we've pitched to them quite a few times, obviously, and the fact that we're grain to glass and all that, I think is attractive to them.
Yeah. So these Bloody Marys are delicious.
They are indeed.
So that's cool. And last night we were out at the first event for Chef and the Maker, and everybody was out peddling their wares. And we were making some cocktails. What were you making?
I don't like to do anything halfway, so I could just bring the whiskey and have one whiskey cocktail, or just the vodka. But I kind of enjoy doing
they were
cocktail for everything. So
you're a man that appreciates the craft of making a cocktail, which I appreciate. You were whipping up egg whites and
then even to the effect of the one that I had was the sage advice.
Yeah,
where you took the garnish, which was like a little. Yeah,
there was sage, and then some bitters. Yeah,
some bitters, and you made a little pine tree out of it, or what was the mark?
Well, pine tree, if you look at it from one direction; hearts, if you look at it from the other. So.
Hearts, really cool.
Yeah, quite the artist over here.
Egg whites and cocktails are fantastic, great mouthfeel. But the reason you use the bitters on top of the egg whites and the sage is just the egg whites alone will kind of smell like stale cardboard, wet cardboard.
Yeah.
So the flavor is fantastic, but the nose isn't that good. So that's why you put something on top to cover up that nose and make it smell nice.
Aromatic bitters.
You hear that, boys? If you haven't showered, bitters.
Bitters.
Sage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Rosemary will probably work at a pinch too.
I'm sure a lot of these golfers are going to need some bitters and sage after 18 holes. But
I buy one of my favorite ones that I make for vodka and for gin cocktails is the Blackberry Sage Collins. So at home I'll make Blackberry Sage syrup. And it's really easy. Just make sugar, equal parts sugar and water, make the simple syrup, and then throw in just as much blackberries and a couple big handfuls of sage, and it smells fantastic and tastes fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I was buying a couple handfuls of sage at the grocery store, and the woman's like, "Are you getting ready to purify a house, or what are you doing with that?" So,
yeah, seriously.
Trying to wake some spirits
exactly.
up or what?
So, all right. So we did golf 9 holes here. Then we got to bring it back to some golf
here we go.
here. We were at the Cradle, which is kind of their fun par 3 short course, 9 holes. It's fun, and you can play the whole course in about an hour, which is probably about what we did.
We did, yeah, exactly an hour.
And so, the longest hole is 127 yards, and I think today it was 115 based off of where they put the tee box. So, how did we do? Well, Mr. Trujillo over here, yours truly, was holding up the rear. I will say this: the last time I golfed was in Los Angeles when I lived there, and traveling to North Carolina, the movers vacuum sealed my bags and my golf bag, and I literally cut it open with a knife this morning, 5 years later. So that will tell you how often I golf.
Likely story.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, I was at the range all night last night, just trying to make sure that I could bone up. No, but so I am a proud owner of a 46 on a par 27.
Excellent. Excellent.
Pretty awesome.
If you played 18 holes, you would have been under 100 with that. Wow.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, which is
if they had a par 3 18 hole at Pinehurst. Coming in second. Everybody who's listening right now, who do you think came in second, Esteban or Matt? Just think in your head, who do you think? Well, here's the truth. Somebody hit a 45, just one stroke better than mine, and someone hit a 39. and the owner of the 39 is not the distiller from Topo. Yes, it's my co-host, Matthew Weiss. Well done, sir.
Yeah. Do I win a trophy? Do I get anything for that? I mean,
this is about as much as you're going to get as me saying good job on the podcast.
We'll have to come up with the NCF&B annual golf trophy.
I like that.
Yeah.
And it'll always be at the Cradle in just 9 holes.
That would be perfect.
Yeah.
That would be great. Imagine just a bunch of chefs drinking Topo vodka,
I like it.
Bloody Marys, and
Playing 9 holes.
playing
really
9
simple.
holes.
Yeah, no.
I really could just stay here forever.
Esteban, for people listening, where can they find you, and where can they find Topo, and where can they buy it?
Yeah, so we are, North Carolina, one of the interesting things about North Carolina is it's not a controlled state. It's labeled as a controlled state, but it's actually not. It's controlled by the state, but it's a franchise by county. And to make it even more difficult, some counties have as many as 5 ABC boards. And so in a true control state like Pennsylvania and Virginia, say, once you get into the state, they'll put you in, say, 20 stores and see how you sell. And if you sell well, then they'll put you in all 500 stores. In North Carolina, you have to go from ABC board to ABC board to ask them to carry you. So there's 100 counties in North Carolina. There are 167 ABC boards. Some of them are very, very small, so they just don't want to carry us because we're not going to move as quickly as a
One of the
Burnett's
big name-
vodka
yeah.
or Jack, right? So, but we're in all the big counties. We're in the top 45 or so counties at least.
And your sprawl goes even outside of North Carolina, correct?
Yeah, we originally went out to about I think about 12 or 13 states, and it's just very difficult to maintain the marketing to push it outside of the state for us. It takes a lot of money, which we don't have quite yet. So, so we're basically focusing on North Carolina. Yeah,
many people saying,
Exactly.
"Oh, those Topo guys, they're rolling in the dough."
Yeah, we might project that image, but no. We are, but we're having a lot of fun, and you know, I think the important thing is we're doing the right thing. So, one of the things I want to talk about is that the fact that we are a grain to glass distillery and we do everything there. And I think the president of the American Distilling Institute a couple of years ago said there's maybe only about 30% of distilleries in the U.S. actually distill. Mm-hmm. Other people just buy alcohol and flavor it, blend it. In some cases, redistill it.
Yeah, I mean, to put that in perspective, and we talk about wine all the time. I mean, that's letting that in a parallel. That's letting someone else grow the grapes, ferment the grapes, and then sell you all the grapes, and then you grab that wine that they created and slap a label on it, and perhaps do a little oak aging or do some sort of manipulation to make it your own.
But in some cases, you don't even do that.
Right. You're really just slapping a label on it and calling it yours. So that is not the case here. You are
correct. We're grain to glass.
making it
So
all.
the way to look at labels for spirits is look at the back of the label and look for distilled and bottled by. Mm-hmm. And that's accurate about 90% of the time, maybe 95%, because some people are redistilling, and so they'll still say distilled and bottled by.
Yeah.
But if it says produced by, then you know that they're not distilling at all.
Yeah.
A lot of moonshines are not really moonshine. You just look at it, and if the front of the label says 100% grain neutral spirits, that means they're buying 95% alcohol, ethanol basically, and flavoring it with apple pie. You know, calling it Grandpappy's secret recipe. So it's not moonshine in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And you know, we think it is important. The fermentation is very, very important in how the spirit ends up. And the bulk distillers are rushing fermentation to get more alcohol quicker, and so the flavor is off. So they have to charcoal filter it heavily, so the alcohol tastes more like ethanol than a food. Mm-hmm. So it tastes more like a medicine than a food. So we do taste tests with our vodka at our distillery, and we use a big name brand that everyone thinks is handmade and distilled in a copper pot still, but it is not. You know, it's not, and you can smell and taste the difference. It's not a nuance. It's one smells like rubbing alcohol, and one smells sweet or creamy or like vanilla or fruity or whatever. But one smells more like a food. So, you know, that's what I'd say. It doesn't. You know, when you get to whiskeys, it doesn't mean it's bad. So High West is got a tremendous reputation, but all they've been doing is blending whiskeys.
Yeah.
So they're not really a distillery, but everyone thinks they distill it because they don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. No, they are. Well, they are now, but
they're starting to. Yeah, they start to.
But no, we talked about that before. It's a common misnomer where so much of the whiskeys in America, or any, like you said, is coming out of this one large distillery, MPG, which is
MGP in Indiana.
MGP, yeah. And
they make good. The whiskeys are fantastic. They make 80% of the rye whiskey in the U.S.
Yeah, but then it's manipulated or changed depending on the individual who buys the quote unquote bulk.
Nope.
It's not. You're saying it's the same.
Yeah, the master distiller visited our distillery a couple years ago. He's got family in I think in Carborough. And he said, nope.
Oh, you're just saying the rye whiskey specifically.
Yeah, the rye whiskey.
But like a bourbon that they make is definitely manipulated or bought or blended.
I don't know about the bourbon because I asked him specifically about the rye because at that point you had some of the major guys saying, no, we our proprietary blend of percentage of rye and all that. And he goes, nope. I make my stuff year round, stick it in barrels, and people come buy the barrels. So it's going to change. The flavor is going to be different from brand to brand based on the aging conditions.
Yeah,
but it's all distilled the same way.
Somebody else is doing the legwork, is
right.
what we're saying,
Yeah,
and then someone else is putting their label on it.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah, the distilling game is a weird one, and I guess a lot of it comes down to just economics and space and time. And people are like, "Hey, man, I want to do this, but I can't make a distillate from grain in this small
it takes a lot of money.
footage." And
it takes a lot of money.
And patience.
Yeah, so kudos to those that are making it, doing it that way.
Kudos to you guys for being truthful and truthfully grain to glass.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we'll hopefully be seeing in the future is people getting more inquisitive about who's actually distilling it.
Yeah,
and it doesn't mean that that the other stuff is bad, but it's like if you went to a restaurant and bought a burger that the chef went to McDonald's and bought a whole bunch of McDonald's patties, cooked McDonald's patties, and then dressed them up. I'm sure you can make them taste good.
Yeah.
But it's not what you're expecting if you go to a fancy restaurant, right? So that's the same thing with the spirits, and people should be curious about where the wheat's coming from and who's actually distilling it, and so
amen to that.
we're going to that, I think.
You were in Spain last year.
Yes.
What the hell was going on?
Family trip to Barcelona, so to see so that was a pretty good story. Went to show my kids. My daughter's 26, my son's 21. And went to show them the house that I grew up in the town that I grew up in just south of Barcelona. And we finally got down there to the house. Looked exactly the same, just a lot smaller than when I grew up. And we could tell that the people were getting ready to have lunch. There was a table out there that was set for 2 people, and they had the netting over the food. And so I walked up, I knocked on the door, I'm like, hello, in Spanish.
Yeah.
And a woman walks out, and I said, hey, I used to live here, and I'd love to show my family the house. And the woman looks at me, and she goes, Esteban? And I literally she hadn't seen me for probably 40 years or so.
Okay.
Wow. But she used to be our next door neighbor. It ended up renting a place. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that was pretty wild.
That's really cool.
You throw these things like you've got kids that are 26 and all, and 40 years ago, and this and that. Are you a vampire? Because how long have you been? I mean, don't tell me your age.
It's Topo.
But seriously, this is a young-looking man. I'm like, if we polled this audience over here, they'd probably say like, yeah, he might be the youngest guy in this group. You don't age, and maybe the organic vodka and whiskey keeps you young.
We'll blame it on that.
Yeah,
there you go.
Last point was Matt. Do you remember that when you first were coming to North Carolina?
Yeah.
One of the first things that we did as the Trujillos is we brought the Weisses to Topo.
Yep.
And we tasted some booze. That was prior to you living here. I think that was just on a trip. And it came out, and we'll put that in our show notes. There's a great picture of all of us. And for some reason, I'm wearing a Dalmatian puppy dog scarf, which I don't know why I did that.
And Sarah's wearing her David Red shirt. That's true.
There you go. Oh yeah. So a lot has centered around and a lot of connections to Topo for us and for everybody here in North Carolina. You guys have definitely been paving the way as distillers, as brewers, as restaurateurs, and you're significant. It's kind of silly that we've gone roughly 100 episodes into our show, and this is the first time that we've officially had you on the show. So
we've talked about it for a long time.
We have talked ad nauseum.
And you guys have been so supportive of us retweeting our stuff and really supportive. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. truly a leader in this industry. So we are happy and blessed to have you. Did I say blessed? I never would say blessed. I've never said that. North Carolina's rubbing off on me. But thank you very much for being on our show. Matt, what else do you have?
Yeah, thanks Esteban for being on the show, for coming to Chef and the Maker, for playing golf with us this morning, and for making the North Carolina grain glass booze.
My pleasure. Thanks for all the vino late last night, or damn you, whichever way you want to look at it. But
yeah, but he's not a vampire because he's up in the sunshine. So
that's true. Well, Twilight kind of
blocker. I've got
changed
blocker.
that whole thing. Yeah.
Anyways, go to Chapel Hill, go to Topo, either the restaurant or the distillery, take a tour, and you will eat and drink merrily.
This segment is brought to you by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com, providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design.
And we are speaking with Nancy Bruns, who is the co-founder and CEO of JQ Dickinson Salt. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
But right now, we're in a courtyard. The weather's perfect.
Ideal, I would say.
Let's call it perfect. and we're sitting in a beautiful courtyard. There's live music that just stopped right now, and we're eating, we're drinking, but most importantly, we're speaking with Nancy about salt. You sum it all up on your website, and a 7th-generation salt-making family harvests an all-natural salt by hand from an ancient ocean trapped below the Appalachian Mountains of the Kanawha Valley in West Virginia. That is fascinating, to say the least. And Matt and I were discussing ancient oceans and mining salt. How did this even get started? I don't mean to take us back 200 years, but
do you have several hours?
Sure. We can make magic on the podcast. Because 7th generation, that would make you somewhat Native American at some point.
Almost, yeah. So my ancestors started making salt in the early 1800s. They had heard that there was this salt source west of the Allegheny Mountains. And so what happened was the ancient Iapetus Ocean, which is 400 to 600 million years old, through tectonic plate shifts, got trapped underneath the Appalachian Mountains and has been redissolved by a freshwater aquifer. So it runs under that area like a salty river. This was pushing up in springs in different places, so large animals were there licking the salt licks, so to speak. Native Americans came for the salt, which was very important for them to cure hides and cure their meats and vegetables and things. And then as the pioneers moved west across the Allegheny Mountains, they found this very valuable source, which was hard to leave the coast because you really needed salt. No refrigeration then, of course, so you needed salt to survive. So that's why my family moved there in the early 1800s and became one of the largest salt producers in the region. And actually, Malden became the largest salt-producing region of the country in the 1830s, 40s, and 50s.
Right, so you're in Malden, West Virginia. And so Malden salt, which is a common phrase, is that where Malden salt comes from?
No, so Malden salt is spelled Maldon, and that's Malden, England.
Oh, okay. Well,
it's in England. So, and they started much later in the 1890s. We started.
But that's really weird and confusing, right?
It is, and we think that there should be some sort of connection somewhere, but we can't seem to find it.
So let's talk about that seriously for a second, because for most of us, we don't know how does salt get made or cultivated.
So our salt is an unusual production method. It's made by solar evaporation, so it comes up in liquid form. We have a well that goes down 350 feet that draws the brine up, and we put it into big sun houses and let it evaporate and crystallize. We wanted to have a very low environmental footprint, so it was important to us to be very sustainable and to make it slowly and be more of an agricultural product, whereas our ancestors used it as it was more of an industrial product. They were burning timber and coal and making it on a very large scale.
So when did that change?
They made it that way until the 1940s.
Oh.
Then when my brother and I revived the business in 2013, it was important to us to have a very low environmental footprint, so we slowed the process down and we used Mother Nature.
Revived the business, so was it
It was from 1945 until 2013. It was non-existent, but we're on the same property.
Oh, fascinating.
It was kind of like a ghost winery or so. Like after Prohibition, like Freemark Abbey was making wine from the late 1800s and then stopped because of Prohibition, and then kicked back in like 1972 or something like that, and then they're pretty established at this point.
Right.
So this is the interesting part that I find. So this is sea salt, yes? This is what you're making. But you're in West Virginia, so obviously the sea is not anywhere near you, but it's this underground sea that has, is there just like a limitless amount of water that's below us? That's what's happening?
It is pretty limitless, we feel. At the height of the industry in the 1800s, there were over 50 producers and 100 wells were drawing on this source. So, and they were pumping almost, 24/7. So we feel we have one well, we pump about 5,000 gallons a week. So we're not really putting a big dent in the
You're
source.
pumping 5,000 gallons of water.
Water, of the brine water.
And so what does that translate into salt?
So we produce about 4 ounces of salt for every gallon of brine.
Okay. So tell me, what are the differentiating factors of salt making, and what differentiates your salt from others?
So every salt from around the world is going to have different characteristics depending on its source. So our salt is going to have characteristics from this underground source. So it's picking up a lot of calcium and magnesium and iron and potassium and like 25 other trace minerals that are in the salt, and that gives it a unique flavor. Whereas a salt made from the Northwest, the Pacific Northwest, or the South Atlantic, or somewhere like that, is going to have a different characteristic. So, and then you have mined salts, like Himalayan salt is mined, just like you'd mine granite or quartz or coal or something. They just grind it down. And it retains a lot of minerality too. That's what gives it its pink color. So every salt has slightly different characteristics that way.
So I just know from restaurants that it seems to me that Brittany of France is like the hallmark salt. Is that would you agree with that that's like the goal, or that's like the flagship?
I wouldn't consider any salt a flagship salt. I mean, Brittany, they make a beautiful, gray salt.
Okay.
And it has a lovely minerality to it, but I think that every salt is different, and you can't have one that is necessarily better than another.
Like if you compare it to the wine world, right? Champagne, there's only one place that makes actual champagne,
right.
Or people would say that the goal for making great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir would be Burgundy,
Right.
So, but you're saying that in the salt world, it's completely equal playing fields.
Well, I think so, but I think if you compare it to something like wine, that you can look at a Chardonnay or Pinot Noir grape grown in Burgundy, which makes they're great winemakers in Burgundy, but they're also great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir makers in California and Oregon, as well as Australia and New Zealand. So, and even though it might be exactly the same grape, it's picking up that terroir of the earth that gives it something different, and its microclimate and all of that. So I just think it speaks to a regionality, so to speak.
So I heard, or I read, kosher salt isn't what it's all made up to be, and if anything, it was like trash salt. Kosher salt has just been thought of as just this generically widespread industry kitchen salt that a lot of chefs swear by, but the article was basically damning it to say that the quality of this salt is actually really low. It's almost worse than just your average table salt, and that we should be looking into salts in a much better way. Is there a level where the quality of salt really has an affecting health benefit or risk, I should say, if we're not having the right type of salt in our food?
I think, there are several factors there you're dealing with. First of all, kosher salt refers to not necessarily it being a kosher product. It's more of the crystal size that you want to kosher meat. You're drawing the blood out of it. And so you can't have it be too fine or too coarse, or else it won't cure the meat correctly. Okay. So, and then chefs got to use this kosher salt. They got used to the size. And when you're cooking, you are picking up salt and you're seasoning food, and your hands get used to seasoning with a certain
this,
set.
a pinch of that, but it's different with the size of the grain.
A lot of chefs and kitchens are very accustomed to a kosher type salt. But I think that most kosher salt, either brands like Diamond Crystal or Morton's kosher salt, they're highly refined. It's 100% sodium chloride. There's no natural minerality left in it. It's so you're not really getting a natural product. You're getting a highly refined product. It's very consistent, and you know what you're getting. But I think if you're looking to source a really fine salt that has natural minerals in it and more flavor, then you use a salt like our heirloom salt, which is a nice coarse crystal similar to a kosher salt. It has 6% trace minerals in it. It's actually a brighter, bolder flavor. You actually end up using less of it, and there's so you're actually getting.
There's the health benefit.
There's the health. You're using less because it's more flavorful, and there's minerals in it, so it's already lower in sodium. So it's a win-win in that way.
That would go over well at the Trujillo household, because I go nuts with my salt, and the family's always like, slow it down, will you?
I have to say, I cook exclusively at home with sea salt. Now, I'm probably not using the most finely crafted sea salt, because it's either, to be honest with you, bought from Trader Joe's or Costco, but my untrained palate when it comes to sea salt doesn't know the difference. So that's what I'm curious is like, so if it says sea salt on a label and it's from a big wholesaler, what would be some of the differences that I would find? It's like, from what I see, like Budweiser to craft beer,
Right, so you're getting, like Morton's makes a sea salt. It should have a certain minerality to it that's just evaporated and not have the highly refined aspect to it.
Well, I would be remiss. I mean, obviously this is going to be a little tough right now with the loud music, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that your salt is highly recognized across the country. Back when I was in California, I knew about your salt. I saw the jars because our chefs were always seeking the highest and best product. But just to give a little perspective for people that want to understand like what J.Q. Dickinson's salt's all about, restaurants like the French Laundry, Holman and Finch in Atlanta, Empire State South, all of the Husks, Sean Brock's restaurants, Parts and Labor in Baltimore, Cream and Flutter and Cashiers, Haymaker in Charlotte, Blackberry Farm in Tennessee, the Dabney in DC. These are great restaurants. You also had about, 100 other restaurants that I'm not labeling or naming, and then a limitless amount of places that are great shops all over the country. So you're well respected in this business from people that really understand great food, and that's where it's like the Curate app of salt, when all these restaurants, all these chefs are saying, yeah, this is the salt that we use. It's kind of you're going to do well by cooking with that type of salt. So great endorsement. We just had it with caramel right now, and that was unbelievable.
Yeah. And well, there is a whole thing that you do actually, right, with pairing the right salt for the right food. So can you just give us a little 101 on that, and like how we would know what salts go with what foods?
Well, I think you look at several things. You want to look at texture and flavor and what the food is, and so I love really coarse salt on meats and things, and you might want to use something finer on in a soup or a stew. I think our salt is very versatile. We do have some smoked salt. We do an applewood smoked salt, and we do a wild ramp salt. Ramps are wild onion that grow in Appalachia. And so those, I think, have very particular uses as well. So
cook those down into a salt, or how does that work?
The ramps, we dry, we dehydrate them, and then mix them into the salt.
Okay. So as a general rule for those home cooks, the heavier or richer or fattier the meat, the coarser the salt, essentially?
I like it that way. Yeah. I mean, I don't like super coarse salt on it, but I like to get that burst of flavor and that crunch. I think it kind of helps work through fat.
And the finer is because it's easier to dissolve, I would imagine,
right,
if you're doing broths and soups and bases like that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But, well, that's going to step up our game.
Yeah, for sure.
We got to be...
I got to say, I bought a Himalayan salt, and again, it was through one of the big retailers. But it, for me, lacked flavor completely. Do you?
Yeah, I think they grind it up so it's really fine, which is I find hard to taste it on the palate. Even though it's more higher in minerals than our salt, but it's not very strongly flavored. I of course I'm partial to our salt, and I feel like it's well balanced and has great flavor. But
so where would our listeners go find your salts?
Depending on where they are, you can find that we're in several different places in the state. Go to our website under our stockist page, and that gives a list by state of restaurants or retailers, or you can order directly from our website.
And your website?
And that's jqdsalt.com. Yeah, you definitely can find a lot there. So thank you so much. Thank you for giving us your time.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, Nancy, this has been fascinating, and I love cooking with salt to begin with, so it's even going to be more fun.
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Guests of the NC F&B podcast receive a swag bag, including gifts from these exceptional North Carolina producers: Social House Vodka, Hungry Harvest, Alley 26 Tonic Syrup, Michael's English Muffins, Larry's Beans and 42 and Lawrence, Ramona Wine Coolers, and Happy Hour Vitamins. Thanks for listening to the NC F&B podcast. I am the voice, Brian Hoyle. Join us next week when we chat with Streamline Kitchen's Chef Paul Malcolm and Brian Campbell. That's next week right here on the NC F&B podcast.